Welcome back to Klepper's Corner, where history isn't just written by the victors, it's mocked by the comedians. Today, we take a journey through time. July 8th, the date that saw more drama, backstabbing, exploration, and political pivoting than a Real Housewives reunion filmed in a United Nations bunker. So buckle up. This is Pivotal Moments, major historical events of July 8th. Segment 1, Vasco da Gama sets sail, spice, ships, and colonialism. Ahoy! July 8th, 1497, Vasco da Gama sets sail from Portugal to find a sea route to India. His goal? Spices. Because nothing says global domination like paprika. Portugal was sick of paying retail through middlemen, so they decided, hey, let's just sail there ourselves. It's like cutting out Amazon and rowing to China for your air fryer. This wasn't just a grocery run, folks. This was the kickoff to global colonialism 2.0. Da Gama reaches India in 1498, and suddenly Europe has a direct line to cinnamon, and also to conquest, slavery, and imperialism. The Mediterranean powers were like, wait, you can sail there? And boom, the Atlantic got promoted, Venice got demoted, and Portugal said, welcome to globalization, baby. Segment 2, the Declaration gets its debut. Fast forward to 1776, July 8th. The Declaration of Independence gets its first public reading. Picture it. People gathered in Philadelphia, hot as hell, no AC, but freedom was in the air. And so was the smell of wool and musk. Colonel John Nixon shouts the immortal words declaring the colony's independence from Britain. Meanwhile, in New York, George Washington's troops are melting down a statue of King George to make musket balls. It's the Founding Fathers' version of a diss track. Of course, not everyone felt included. Abigail Adams wrote, "Remember the ladies." And Samuel Johnson dropped the mic with, "Why yelp for liberty while owning slaves?" So yeah, freedom for some, just not the majority. But hey, it's not hypocrisy if you do it at a powdered wig, right? Segment 3, Vermont cancels slavery early. Kind of. The very next year, July 8th, 1777, Vermont, which at the time was basically the hipster cousin of America, abolished slavery. First region in North America to do it, too. Their constitution was like, no man over 21 or woman over 18 can be enslaved, which is progressive, until you realize some people just changed the birth date on their ledgers. Baby born in 1760? Nah, make it 1765. We need more unpaid labor. Still, Vermont made a statement. Slavery? Not here. Black men voting? Go for it. Ben & Jerry's? Eventually. And while it wasn't perfect in practice, it was a big step forward in a country still tripping over its founding contradictions. Segment 4. Commodore Perry shows up loudly. 1853, Commodore Perry arrives in Japan with 4 ships and big American energy. Picture a guy walking into a quiet tea ceremony with a foghorn screaming, "Trade with us or else!" Japan had been peacefully isolated for 2 centuries. Perry said, "Nice, now open your ports." And they did. Not because they wanted to, but because cannons are persuasive. It worked. Japan modernized so fast it went from samurai swords to steam engines like it was in a Fast and Furious montage. And by the early 20th century, Japan had gone from please go away to hell no, we're building an empire. Segment 5. Wall Street gets a newspaper. In 1889, the Wall Street Journal was born. Finally, a newspaper for people who thought Dickens' novels had too much plot and not enough bond market analysis. It brought transparency to the stock market, or at least as much transparency as possible without Instagram. Before the WSJ, traders relied on rumors, telegrams, or just vibes. Now they had facts. Well, mostly. Its motto, news, not opinions. Take that, Twitter. It made financial reporting respectable, turned the market into a spectator sport, and eventually became the paper of choice for anyone who owned suspenders and 5 screens. Segment 6, rock bottom in the Great Depression. July 8th, 1932, the Dow hits its lowest point ever, 41.22. That's not a stock market. That's a blood pressure reading for someone who's already flatlined. America was broke, banks were collapsing, farmers were literally eating dust, and President Hoover was like, let's just wait it out. Meanwhile, unemployed veterans were camping out in Washington asking for bonuses, and Hoover said, how about tear gas instead? This was the low point. But it set the stage for FDR and the New Deal. The government started making jobs, building dams, creating Social Security, and basically inventing the idea that government could help people who aren't billionaires. Radical stuff. Segment 7, Roswell, aliens, weather balloons, and conspiracies. July 8th, 1947, Roswell. A UFO, a balloon, a Cold War cover-up, all of the above. The military first says, we found a flying disc. Then, never mind, it was a weather balloon. Later, okay, it was a spy balloon, but still not aliens, you weirdos. But it was too late. Conspiracy theorists got their origin story. Roswell is now the Disneyland of alien lore. If you've ever been probed, abducted, or just lost an hour in New Mexico, you can thank July 8th. Segment 8, MacArthur gets the keys to Korea, 1950. General Douglas MacArthur is appointed UN commander in Korea. America says we need someone decisive, and MacArthur says, I need a pipe, sunglasses, and absolute power. He wins big early on, but pushes too far into North Korea, basically poking China with a nuclear stick. Truman says, maybe don't start World War III. MacArthur says, you're not the boss of me. Truman, actually, I am. You're fired. It was a moment of democratic clarity. The military answers to civilians. You don't get to start a war just because your hat game is strong. Segment 9, first American deaths in Vietnam. July 8th, 1959. 2 U.S. soldiers are killed in Vietnam. Not advisors, not background characters, combat deaths. Real, irreversible, and just the beginning. From here on out, the U.S. goes from we're just helping to here comes 500,000 troops. It's like the worst case of mission creep in history. Vietnam becomes a quagmire of Cold War paranoia, nationalism, and jungle booby traps. But it all began on this day in a mess hall during movie night. Segment 10, Atlantis says goodbye, July 8th, 2011. The last space shuttle launch. Atlantis goes up and a whole era comes down. The shuttle was supposed to be cheap, reusable, and reliable. Instead, it was expensive, exploded twice, and became a metaphor for NASA's midlife crisis. With its retirement, America outsourced space. We went from Houston, we have a problem, to SpaceX, do you take Venmo? Goodbye shuttle program, hello billionaires playing zero-G beer pong on the moon. In conclusion, history is a wild ride. So there you have it, July 8th. One day, 10 big moments. From navigating spices to navigating space. From shouting independence to whispering conspiracies. And from economic crashes to jobless astronauts. History isn't just a collection of facts. It's a chaotic mixtape of human ambition, failure, irony, and the occasional UFO. And remember, if you don't learn from history, you'll probably end up like MacArthur, yelling at your boss on national TV. See you next time on Klepper's Corner.